Let's reminisce about the good old days of 100.7 WMMS, although it was 101 FM back then, because people didn't have they didn't have digital radios, Dieter. It was just like it was around the area of where it was. So it would be a 101. It's like 100.7. It's close to 101.
Right.
And then, I don't know, I guess when digital radios got big, then they changed to 100.7, I guess. Good morning.
Hey, how
are you? Now, do people still refer to you as Flash, or do people call you Ed? How do people refer to you these days?
It's mostly Flash.
It's mostly Flash.
It's going to go on my gravestone, I think.
You did mornings here for how long?
21 and a half years.
20, okay.
Yeah.
How did you get into the business? How did you start working in radio?
Well, let me put it this way. I was a radio geek.
He has a radio voice, too.
Let
me interrupt. If you listen to his voice, I mean,
it's hot.
Compared to mine.
You're
I have a nasally,
annoying.
It's amazing I ever have a job in this industry.
Right.
Him, on the other hand, he has
It's smooth.
I read that the program director heard his voice and said he needs to be on the air, and I said that's revisionist history. That's not how it went down. But now that I hear it, I probably did have
real fast. I'm sorry, guys.
FM radio back in that day was all about voices. Well, Boom, Len Boom Boom Goldberg.
Yeah.
He was the voice of the station. You're still playing his station IDs. But that's how FM was, especially in the early days. MMS started in '68, and it was the kind of the George Carlin bits, the hippy dippy, hey, laid back music.
Hey there.
Play 20 minutes of Pink Floyd right now on MMS.
Right. And so you had the voice that fit.
That worked. But as far as my start in radio, in high school, my start was actually in Normandy High School. I was the morning announcer at when they did the morning announcements
on
the PA system. Yeah. And it was WPOP, the Pride of Parma. And I loved radio at the time. We're talking late 60s, and I was in the audiovisual department. I used to play with the guys in there. We would go, Led Zeppelin came out with Whole Lotta Love, and we'd play it on the tape recorders that they were supposed to be used for classroom teaching. So we're listening to Whole Lotta Love back there. And then I gravitated toward the morning announcements, went to Cleveland State University, and that's where I met Kid Leo and Matt the Cat. They were doing shows
who were DJs on this radio station.
And that was also a PA system. It was called WCSU, Cleveland State University. It's changed name. It's now CSB. But we were not on the air. It was a PA system in a building that no longer exists called Stillwell Hall. And we broadcast to the cafeteria.
Yeah.
That was it. But it was a cool format, and we were playing just about anything we wanted. Music's breaking out. We're talking 1973. Kid Leo gets a job. At that time, the station changed hands. It was owned by Metro Media. Milt Maltz of Mallrite Broadcasting purchased the station in December of '72. A lot of staff had left, like what happens when there's a change in management, change in ownership. And Leo was hired for Saturday night. About a month later, I get a call from their sister station, WHK at the time. They needed some help in the newsroom. And they said, hey, we need some help, $2 an hour. When can you start? This is a Friday afternoon. And I said, I'll be there Monday morning.
Perfect.
I literally ran down the street, got the application together. I'm working mornings like 5 to 8 in the morning, just doing news prep. And about 11 months later, that was my door to MMS. I mean, I had my eye on
you don't want to do the news stuff. That was boring. That sucked.
Well, I still did the news at MMS, but I mean, that's when
but you wanted to be on a cool
I wanted
radio
MMS.
station.
That's all I wanted. I had to be on MMS. And it was in January of '74 that I started. And Jeff, my partner, he started about the same time, going back to '73, but he was in the production. He did the commercials. And we became friends because on weekends we'd hang out together. In 1976, and I've told this story a couple of times, we got together because the morning show guy, Charlie Kendall, liked to party a lot. He had a voice deeper than mine.
Yeah.
And
when you say he liked to party, we're talking in the mid-'70s.
Yeah, we're talking.
Were you talking smoking weed? You talking alcohol, coke? What was big in the mid-'70s?
You said it all.
All of it. There's a mixture of everything. Just put it all in a pile and consume it. That's right.
He was a party boy. There's no question. He also hung out with the record guys, and he was a ladies' man.
Yeah.
And the show was 6 to 10 at the time. Charlie often would call like at 4 or 5 in the morning, said, I can't come in.
He's
Jeff,
too hammered.
Yeah, Jeff, or we didn't even know where he was. Sometimes he didn't even call. Jeff lived in Lakewood, and all you need is jeans and a T-shirt. Bingo, 15, 20 minutes down the shortway, and you're there. And that's how Jeff and Flash was born.
So that's how you guys basically started doing mornings because this guy couldn't get into work on time.
Pretty much so.
Yeah.
And the management said, you know what? It's time for Charlie to leave. And he ended up, I mean, he's been in probably about 20 markets since. And he is now retired. He started a production company. He did movie trailers. He was very successful, very successful. But it was in actually December of 1976, Jeff and Flash was born. AM was still king. Keep this in mind. There was a guy in town by the name of Gary D. I don't know if you know your Cleveland radio history. But he was kind of like the Howard Stern of his day. Very successful. But AM started to decline, and he eventually went off the air. As AM went down,
and
FM
AM was
went
big
up.
just because FM people didn't have FM radio.
Exactly.
I mean, FM sounds a million times better. I can't even listen to AM radio now. It's on.
I hear you. Right.
You can't understand it. Like, I don't know why we run baseball games here on WMMS, Indians baseball games, and so does our AM station. Who in the hell would listen on the AM station? What the hell's wrong with you?
No reason.
I don't get it. But anyhow, but people just didn't have FM radio.
We had FM converters and radios. You had an AM station, AM radio in your car. You could turn AM into FM, and for like, $15, $20. But then the cars started becoming equipped with AM and FM.
And that's when FM became bigger.
Yeah.
All right, so you start doing mornings. You a single guy at the time?
Yeah.
Oh, man, you must have been living like the king of Cleveland,
It was fun.
You were the man. So now, I always look back at this time. I was born in 1975. I can only imagine what it was like. But the guy who hired me in Cleveland, he used to work at WMMS. Walt Taberski was his name.
I know Walt.
And there were always stories and you'd hear stories about this. It sounds like a huge party time. Was it?
It was.
Is it glorified after the fact? Like, was it really as crazy of a time?
It reflected the culture that was going on in America. I mean, you think about the 70s, the music explosion. The record companies were huge. There was new music coming out almost every hour. It was ridiculous, and MMS was the outlet for that. Every day. I mean, the record companies were clamoring to get in here, and there's all kind of stories, of course. Yeah, the
Did you
parties.
take any kickbacks? Because people would back in the day, they would try to basically pay DJs just cash, like, play my record, get this record on the air. I'll give you $500 or something, or I'll give you this or that.
No, that didn't. We did the morning show. You have to understand something. The music, it came to a point where there was some degree of format. Early in the days when I started there in, say, 74, 75, it was pretty much a free-for-all. We can play anything we wanted. It was important that if you played something to tell the next personality, hey, I played this song in the last 45 minutes. Don't play it again. Give it a couple of hours. But there was no computers. Keep in mind, there was no computers, no cell phones, no internet back then. I mean, it was a whole different time for radio. And radio.
Would you play actual records?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And if you bumped the console, you'd hear the record skip.
The whole thing. Yeah.
Right.
So in the mornings, how much was talk? How much was music?
We generally played in our heyday, which I would say, as far as the ratings go, which was mid-'80s, it was about 8 songs an hour, 7 to 8. And it would depend. on a guest coming into the studio. If somebody came in, they'd spend some more time. It would go down to maybe 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a music element to the show. There was a comedic element. We had the token jokes,
Mm-hmm.
which were like at 8:10. We had the blow-ups at 7:45. There was the morning mind exercise, a question that we'd throw out to listeners. We'd play games, depending on the day. If it was April Fool's Day, we would joke around with people. And just, it was all good intentions, a lot of fun. Like on April Fool's, it was, I have to laugh what we did one time. We would give a gas station that we were giving away free gas.
Mm-hmm.
And we would make a fictitious intersection in town, 2 roads that would not intersect. That never intersected. And people in the morning, they're saying free gas. So they're driving down Ridge Road, and they're driving and driving. And it's so funny because people ran out of gas looking for the free gas.
And of course, there was no way at the time, you didn't have Twitter to tell people, they couldn't look on Twitter and go, you're being scammed by the radio station. They just had to believe what they were being told over the air, essentially. So did you make, at this point, it's different now. They're like, you have the internet. There's a lot of competition for eyeballs and ears. I'm guessing radio made quite a bit of money back in the day as far as advertising revenue goes, because it was one of, not the only game in town, but there weren't as many places for you to spend your advertising dollars. Did you make good money doing the morning show?
At first, I did. I told you I started at $2 an hour. Yeah, I started. And it was a union contract at the station, so you had certain union rules, but we had personal service contracts once the ratings started escalating.
Yeah,
which wasn't until, like, say, the early to mid 80s, and at that point everybody was doing very, very well.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the most amount of money you made at the time? Tell me.
Most amount of money.
In 1 year, what was the most amount of money the radio station paid you? Charlie's nodding. He wants to hear this. Charlie, do you think that? What do you think?
If you
just were to take a guess, what would you think it would be?
We're not counting inflation and everything.
Yeah, that's in like 19. Well, tell us what year you think you made the most amount of money. Was it in the mid 80s, late 80s?
Toward the end of the run.
Okay, so
late
80s,
early 90s.
1988, 1989, Charlie. In 1989 dollars, what do you think?
Oh, it's still 10 times more than I make.
Uh-huh.
Right?
I was going to say the same.
No.
Same that you're making now.
Even if we take inflation into account, it's still 10 times more. Yeah.
Boy, I really have no idea. That's a great question. What do you think the most amount of money that they would make back in 1989?
I don't know, because I don't want to.
Rover, why don't you tell Flash what you made? And then we'll compare it that way.
2017.
Deal. In 1989, I was in 8th grade, so I made 0. What did you make? Now, what's the most you made in 1 year?
By the time I left the station, it was in the 6 figures.
6 figures.
Yeah,
so
but there were people at the station making twice that and more.
More than
Really?
you, and you were doing mornings, and they were getting paid more than you.
Yeah,
Kid Leo was.
He was up there.
Was he the afternoon guy at the time?
Yeah, he worked from 2 to 6 at the time.
He seemed to get he got a lot of glory.
Mm-hmm.
More than the morning show, would you say, or?
Boy, I don't have all the figures on all that. I don't want to throw out numbers in there, but I know he was making a good amount of money.
Yeah.
And Jeff was making a good amount of money. We weren't actually equal.
Why not?
I don't know. I never could figure that out because it was just it was the structure of the management back then.
Uh-huh.
And when we first started, I told you I started as a newsman, and according to the contract, they got a certain amount of money. And then as I became a personality with them, became the Jeff and Flash Show, then it became the Buzzard Morning Zoo, and we had more elements.
Mm-hmm.
We had Len Goldberg. We had Ruby Cheeks. That was at our peak in the mid-'80s. We had Kenny Clean. Then we added Mr. Len. I mean, there were a lot of – it's very similar to what you have here.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of elements to the show.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of people to pay, and that's how they kind of worked the show. Jeff was the kind of the ringleader
leader
on all that,
yeah.
and that's how they structured the pay scale. we all did well, and we all made personal appearances, which we got compensated for.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, at the time, keep in mind this is 30 plus years ago, we were doing really well.
Sure.
Really well.
Right.
And I came across this figure just the other day. If you were making $4 an hour, which was like the minimum wage in 1973,
Mm-hmm.
$4 or $4.10 an hour, you would have to make $23 an hour today
To be equivalent.
to
Yeah.
that $4 with all the inflation that's
Right,
going on.
right. So making over $100,000 a year back then.
If you're making that
huge.
kind of money, you're doing well.
It's
I mean,
like
that
$1
would
million.
that would
today
be
or
the
something,
equivalent. Yeah,
probably. Right,
exactly.
Right. So you lasted 20 years. What happened? What drew an end to you doing mornings and the morning show?
Well, that is an interesting story because I say it's like the wheels that came off the train. John Gorman was the mastermind of the music and the structure of the station.
He was the program director.
He was a program director. He came in 73. I mean, a lot happened in 73. Jeff came in 73. I came in 73. Matt the Cat, John Gorman, Denny Sanders was there, I think 2 years before that. Denny was in Boston, and he actually asked for John to come to Cleveland and check out this cool radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And we all kind of grew up together. John left in 86. Management kind of was fussing
Mm-hmm.
with formats. And if you take a look at the year 1986, there was no such station as a classic rock station. MMS was all things to all people. We had young people, we had old people, we had a strong demo.
Mm-hmm.
Our key demo was 18 to 34. We were so strong in that demo, we captured 25 to 54.
Mm-hmm.
So we owned the market. After so long, people kind of figured out, well, the music that we broke in the 70s moved into that classic format.
Yeah.
And
So it started to fragment the audience.
yeah, it was
essentially.
a slow
And
chipping
your
away.
program director left. This John Gorman guy
Yeah.
left. So they were probably rudderless for a
We
while,
had
so.
like a different programmer almost every
Mhm.
6 months.
And they were all idiots, I bet. It's still true today. Flash,
Something's never
I'm telling you.
changed.
It's right. I've never met a bunch of bigger idiots than the people who run radio
True.
stations. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Lots of drugs, lots of partying.
No, I
Really?
wouldn't. No, it was. I mean, you had to come in at 4:35 in the morning.
Yeah.
You had to do a morning show. I mean, there was a perception
That you were doing lots of drugs and partying.
that it was a cult of drugs going on or
Uh-huh.
something like that. No, it was.
What
it-
about the rest of the guys at the radio station? A lot of partying going on with the rest of the people at the station?
There's a long pause there.
Well, so lots of drug use.
There
right?
was partying going on. It wasn't anything out of the norm of what was going on in America. at
Did
the
you
time.
score chicks left and right? I mean, who got the most chicks from the radio station? Was it
Well,
you?
I don't know. I don't have a chickometer on.
Well, I mean, if you had to guess, would it have been you getting the most girls? Jeff? Kid Leo? Matt the Cat? Who got the most girls?
Oh boy, we had nightclubs at one time. We had 3 nightclubs going at one time.
What do you mean you had 3 nightclubs?
Well,
going?
we had our name on them.
Oh, I see. I
We
see.
had a nightclub in Lorraine called Monopolies,
Uh-huh.
79 through 81. After that, we did a place called it used to be Dixie Electric, and it was a mining company. And that was over by Brook Park and Pearl.
So you were not partners, or maybe partners. You had some sort of interest in these
Interest in
nightclubs.
them. Yeah, we got paid at the mining company. Then we eventually went down when the flats started taking off. We had
Yeah.
a place called Jeff and Flash's Noisemakers.
Uh-huh.
That was on the East Bank, and then we had a place out in
And girls would
Lorraine.
just line
There
up
were-
waiting for you to
there-
come in there, basically.
There were a lot of women around. Let me put
Wow.
it that way.
So we could actually be broadcasting to perhaps some unknown Jeff and Flash children right now that you don't know about.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
So you left the radio station in what year?
1974.
No, that's when you started. When you left.
When I left.
Yeah.
1994.
94. And what'd you do? Did you stay in radio? Did you?
Well, we went over to the AM side, ironically.
What the hell's wrong with you? What a dumb move that was.
Well, it was a dumb move looking backwards. But we were, listen, if we can backtrack a little bit, I told you how everybody was chipping away at the radio station. Then there was different managements, ownership changes. And eventually, in 1994, they sold the station, broke us up, and I stayed. Brian and Joe were the morning show at that time. I stayed with them for a few months. Jeff went over to, it was called 3WE. It's now WTAM, which is your sister station. And they had a new owner that ran WLW down in Cincinnati. They wanted to do a Jeff and Flash talk show in the afternoon from like 3 to 6. So we started on there. The station was in the toilet, horrible ratings, and we pretty much doubled them in a short amount of time. They changed program directors, put us in the morning, and 3 years later, it just fell apart. So we left that station, and it was October of 97. And Jeff took some time off. He left. He got a real bitter taste in radio, went down to Texas and got into business with his brother. I still was trying to scout around for voice work, started an advertising company, PR and advertising, which I still have today. Flashpoint Communications was born. And I had the opportunity to host a labor union show called America's Workforce. That came in 1998. And I'm still doing that show. I pre-recorded in the morning, and it airs on another station in town. But what makes it really significant, it's podcasts all around.
Wait a second. What is this now? It's a
labor union show.
A labor union show.
Yeah, labor unions, as you should know, have gotten beaten up. Are you the guy that has the billboards up that say, every time I drive home, there's these weird billboards that say, right to work, it's a lie. I don't even know what the hell that means. Those are sponsored by, I think, the operating engineers, and they're fighting that.
I don't even know what the hell that means. I just see these billboards. They're spending a fortune on billboards, and I go, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Right to work essentially means that you could belong to a union and not pay the union dues. And that's eventually going to hurt the unions.
Yeah.
And it was just defeated in the state of Missouri. So I come from a union family.
I worked for the state of Nevada when I was a kid, before I got into radio, actually simultaneously. And I worked for a mental hospital, and they wanted me to join the union. I go, I don't want to join. I'm not going to be doing this the rest of my life. And they couldn't force you to pay. And I go, forget it. I'm not paying. They didn't like that. And I guess that's what they're trying to fight against here.
Right.
Okay.
Nevada is a very pro-union state. The culinary workers are very strong there with all the casinos.
There. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you do now? You're out of radio. Other than that.
I do that show, and it's very successful. We've got some big union sponsors, and to be honest with you, I never thought I'd be doing it for 20 years. The show's been around for 25 years, and we're gaining more sponsors. Unions have been beaten up over the years. In 68, 70, maybe 1 out of 3 people belong to a union. Now it's 1 out of 10. So they need some help, and that's what the radio show is all about. 3 years later, this was in 2000, I had the opportunity. I got into public relations, advertising, and I had an opportunity to work for the municipal court system. There was a job opportunity there as a public information officer downtown at the Justice Center. So I applied. And I lucked out. There were about 67 people. I was one of 67 who applied, and I got the job.
Well, they knew. They go, Flash, we got to hire Flash from Jeff and Flash.
Half the judges grew up with Jeff and Flash.
Of course. That's right.
So I had half. All I needed was 7 votes out of 12.
Yeah.
So I had it. It worked out really well. I started actually part-time, and then about a year and a half later became full-time. And I love it. It's fun. What do I do? It's a lot of judges, if you know anything about them, they can't speak about certain cases, especially if the case is still happening. So that gives me the opportunity
to do that.
So you're
like the spokesperson
for the court. And there's a lot of internal stuff like putting annual reports together, brochure. We try to go out in the community. We have programs like our drug court, our veterans treatment docket. These are good things that the court does for people who have, say, a drug offense, to get them treatment, get them the help that they need. And it's wonderful. It's very rewarding work.
Tell me about WMMS stuffing the ballot box for the Rolling Stone best radio station in the country. Now, this is, I mean, I've heard this, but I don't know the backstory of it. So every year for like 10 years.
No, it was 6 years.
6 years.
6 years, yeah.
They won best radio station in the country. WMMS did, this station. But then it turns out that it was you were stuffed, or someone was stuffed. What happened? Give me the rundown on this.
Well, the first 6 years was because of people loving the station.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was some people that were a little geeked by the fact that, wow, this has never happened before. Let's keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
So they purchased a lot of magazines to fill out the ballots.
So the ballots would come in a Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you couldn't just write on a blank piece of paper or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't have online. Like, you can go online.
No, you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And the funny part about it, it was almost like turned into a Watergate thing. Like, oh, my God, there was this corruption going on. All-star balloting for baseball is the same way. If you get a bunch of ballots, you're whoever you want to be a player.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not defending something that was wrong. Yeah, it did not.
Did they go, okay, Flash, here's your stack of 8,000 Rolling Stone magazines. Get to it. Did you?
There was a few that we filled out.
So you filled these all out by hand.
Yeah.
The whole staff of the radio station, essentially.
There was a few.
Now, I would assume other radio stations were probably doing the same thing, if I had to guess, around the country.
Probably.
So, you guys were just better at it.
Yeah.
And,
we wrote faster.
What other controversies do you recall from your days at the radio station? There was that one. What else?
Well, I have to tell you about the bank robber story.
Okay.
And I told this briefly, but that incident at MMS, the Rolling Stone incident, was my definition of the end of the radio station run, because that was 87, 88 or so.
Mm-hmm.
When John left, that happened. John Gorman, I'm
Mm-hmm.
referring to. That was the beginning of the final unravel, because I think people lost a lot of faith.
And other radio stations go, hey, look, these guys are frauds.
Everybody
phonies.
jumped on that, and that's when the division of like different formats, like classic rock,
right,
oldies formats, they were taking a little bit here, a little bit there, but that was definitely the death knell for the radio station. But we still hung on. I mean, I didn't leave till 6 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
left the station in '94. People at the end of the decade were still asking me if I worked at MMS.
Yeah.
How well branded.
We still get that when we go to events, Flash. Every time I go to an event, they go, who's Rover? That guy sucks. Where's Flash?
Well, I had heard, I don't know if this is true, because before you got here, Rover,
yes,
there were a lot of morning shows.
A million of
that
them.
did not succeed. And the rumor was it was the curse of Jeff and Flash.
Yeah.
Nobody could succeed. So you broke that curse.
There were, I mean, if I had to guess, would you say, there were over 20 morning shows.
Yeah.
At least, more than 20. We're talking probably 25, 30 morning shows between you guys leaving and us coming here in 2008. So they had a run of just absolute pathetic morning shows. And frankly, the radio station before we got here, I mean, not to credit us, I don't know if this radio station would still, I mean, it's called Cleveland's Rock Station, but let's face it, we play 3 songs a day. I don't know if the station would still exist if we hadn't come over here, because they were really in bad shape in 2008. They might have flipped formats, which would have been a weird thing. Now, I don't know. Maybe they could have stuck around.
Well,
they were
MMS
getting their ass kicked.
MMS almost went country before I got there.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking because there was no country outlet. There was only one country station in Akron in the early 70s, and they were talking about it. And Denny Sanders and a group, this is, like I said, before I even got here, they went to the management and said no. And they even started a community petition drive saying we have to keep it. This is a progressive radio
But we know all the
station.
signatures were fake, just like the Rolling Stone ballots.
No,
they
weren't fake
anyone.
then. No. Bank robber story.
Yes.
I got to tell you that. You're talking about controversy. It's kind of funny. This is a story, and I tell the story today, and people don't even believe it. because it happened in the early 80s. And if it happened today, it would be national news. You have to say, I'm doing the news, and I worked 5 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the end of my day. And there was a slew of bank robberies going on in Cleveland. People just frustrated. The economy was changing. There were a lot of jobs leaving. So what I decided to do, I heard there was a robbery in Brecksville. Nice community. And I didn't have the resources. I didn't have anybody that I could send out there to cover the story. So I called the bank.
Mm-hmm.
The bank robber answers.
Oh, it's not the manager of the bank. It's the actual bank robber.
I had heard that there was a bank robbery and there were hostages.
Uh-huh.
So I called the bank, and I said, who are you? He says, I'm the bank robber. And I'm like, you kidding me? It turns out that he's holding about 5 or 6 people hostage. He's like a Vietnam vet, disgruntled, lost his job, probably suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, all those elements. He's a fan of the radio station. He says, who's this? I said, Ed Flash Ferenc. He says, I listen to you guys. And I said, well, can you tell me what's going on? I says, well, and he tells me the whole story about how downtrodden he is and all that. I'm rolling tape on this. Now, this is not on the air.
Mm-hmm.
Matt's on the air, so we're talking about 1:30 in the afternoon. And he says, you know what, can you play me a song? I says, I got a bank robber holding a gun to hostages, and he's requesting a song. And I said, what's the song? He goes, Funeral for a Friend. So immediately, I'm thinking to myself, this is not going to end well.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay. And then at that time, the lines were cut. I went over to Matt. I said, we got to get this on the show, on the air, right away. And we played it. Eventually, everything was settled. But what I did, you asked me about controversy. The FBI, and this was told to me after the incident, I took a lot of grief because I was talking to a bank robber and I was, quote, interfering with a criminal investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And the FBI changed their protocol because there were like 5 or 6 phone lines that went into the bank. Like any business, you had multiple phone lines, just like you have here at the radio station. So what they did, they changed the protocol. If there was anything like that, where there's a hostage situation and somebody's holding a gun, they would sever all the lines except for one. So
that they would then use.
Some Yahoo like me wouldn't be able to get through.
Right.
But because of that, and I took a lot of grief too, because the media was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he did that,"
exploiting the situation.
At the same time, anybody, they were just ticked
I would have
off.
put them on the air live.
Exactly.
Are you kidding me? Tape it. It would have been. Yeah. I would have.
Well, we didn't have the access.
Yeah.
We didn't have the access to go live from the newsroom at that time. Maybe it was just it was a whole different world.
Right.
But it was definitely. But think about that, Rover. If that happened today, it'd be all over the world. A story like that.
Yeah.
I mean, an air personality at an FM station talking to a bank robber requesting Elton John's Funeral for a Friend. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean, that's a crazy
story
that you were able to get through.
But that is a reflection of what we were able to do.
I would call and they go, "Who, Rover? I never heard of you."
I want to talk to Flash.
Yeah.
Did you play that audio back the next day or later in the day?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, we did.
That day?
Yeah, that day, right? I mean, of course, that day they get the little razor blades out. They were recording on reel-to-reel tape.
Yeah.
Back in the day, probably. Your favorite memory of working at WMMS?
Oh my gosh, there's so many, but one really stands out, and that is the interview with Pete Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have time for 2?
You have all the time in the world. I don't know if you told us, but if anyone told you, we don't do commercials anymore on this radio station. I just talk until they come in here and pull the plug. No, actually, should I take a break, Doogie? Should I do that? All right, let me take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap it up with Ed Flash Ferenc. We'll hear his two stories of his,
and they're rock and roll stories too.
And yes, they broke all sorts of music. I want to know who the coolest band or artist was that came through here that you got to meet as well. All right, let me take a break. Charlie, you're looking at me. What are you looking at?
I got some stuff to play out here.
What do you got? Oh, you got something to play us out? We'll be right back on Rover's Morning Glory.
Good morning from the Buzzard Morning Zoo. Rise and shine with folks like you. Good morning from the Buzzard Morning Zoo.
As you may know, it is the Buzzard. That's our flagship station, 100.7 WMMS in Cleveland, Ohio. It's where we are based. And it is the 50th anniversary of this radio station, 50th birthday, I guess you could say, of WMMS. And Ed Flash Ferenc is here. He was on the morning show for 20 plus years. Jeff and Flash. He's with us here. All right, so, and by the way, someone just brought in this beer. This is from Platform Beer. It's the 50th anniversary Rockin' Buzzard Brew, which just is in stores as of today, Dieter.
Try it out. Is it good?
Well, it's warm. It's room temperature.
You can still drink it warm.
Why would they? I mean, maybe a nice cold one. You know?
Douchey.
Let's
chill
do that.
these.
No, this just is out of the trunk of someone's car right now. I think room temperature. But find that in stores. Drink that up. Flash, you were going to tell us. Where do we leave it? Two rock stories.
I got two rock
stories.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you have for us?
This was in 1982. The Who just finished a concert in Cincinnati, which was a national story because they had what they called festival seating. They didn't have assigned seats.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody stormed in. 11 people were trampled to death. 11 people.
I remember that.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Huge story. And they were coming to Cleveland like 3 or 4 days later. They played Cincinnati. Then they went, I believe, to a suburb of Boston. And they were coming to the old Richfield Coliseum on a Monday and a Tuesday. So John Gorman, I mean, this is a big story. John Gorman said, they're going to arrive at Hopkins Airport in a private area, private field, on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, like at 2 in the morning. I'm thinking, oh, geez, 2 in the morning? What kind of condition am I going to be interviewing the Who?
Yeah.
But he wanted me to go to the airport, take a tape recorder, and see what, if they had anything to say about coming to Cleveland after this incident. So I show up, and Daltrey was great. He was hey, he starts talking, it's good to be in Cleveland. It's too bad of what happened. We have to move on. And Pete Townsend was just looking down. Keep in mind, they just played a concert.
Mm-hmm.
They're just dead tired. 2 in the morning, all they wanted to do was hit the hotel and go to sleep. Townsend said, you know what, I'm not going to talk to you now. I'll talk to you after the show tomorrow. Okay, fine. He blew me off. So I go to the concert on a Monday night, and it was a great show, 2.5 hours long. And keep in mind, I'm doing mornings. Mm-hmm. So I went backstage.
But it was the Coke that kept you up all the
Yeah,
time.
it was the Coke, right.
Yeah, nonstop Coke.
Right. So I'm backstage. I had all the backstage passes and all that. There's Rolling Stone magazine. Time magazine is there. Everybody. Because it's the Who, and it's following Cincinnati. Kid Leo is there talking, and record companies are back there. And I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't know if this is going to happen. I spent about an hour back there.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I'm getting ready. I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. This is probably about 12:30, 1 o'clock. I stand up, and all of a sudden, I see Townsend about maybe 30 feet away. And he looks up, and he said, you waited for me at the airport, didn't you? I said, yeah, that was me. He says, come over here. Let's talk. I'm like, what? This guy remembered me? Pete Townsend remembered me? So we sat down, turned on the tape recorder, and we talked for about 20 minutes. And the station ID, MMS always, hey, I'm Bruce Springsteen. When I'm in Cleveland, I listen to MMS.
Right.
I'm Pete Townsend. I got that ID where Townsend said, because with what happened in Cincinnati, what kind of prolific ID can you give me?
Right.
And that's when he said, hi, this is Pete Townsend of The Who, and rock and roll will always, 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 always overcome eventually. And you have it.
Yes.
It's part of that the series that we're playing.
Right, right.
And that is by far was the most played ID on this radio station because of what he said and how he said it. It was so impassionate. But that was
Charlie, find that for me right now.
that was a really cool moment in time to think, wow, especially when he saw my face. I mean, he saw me for a glimpse of a second at the airport, and then 2 days later, I mean, that was a Saturday night, Sunday morning, and then late on a Monday night going into Tuesday morning, he's remembering me. That was fantastic. The other story too involved the Rolling Stones, and it's kind of funny and sad at the same time, but my wife, who I love dearly, is a big Stones fan. We were married in 1988, and
you're still married.
And I'm still married.
It's amazing.
Well, she's my second wife.
Okay.
I was first married in
you gotta
79.
get some practice.
Yeah, I had to get some practice.
Yeah.
But in 1988, we had a child, and then 13 months later, twins. Okay, so 3 in diapers and doing morning drive radio.
Yeah.
So that was
no sleep.
That was a real fun time. But Rolling Stones doing their Steel Wheels tour. They're playing at the old Municipal Stadium, and we're broadcasting live that day from like 4 o'clock on. And my wife wanted to see the Stones really bad, but twins were born just weeks before that, and she had to nurse them. She couldn't leave. And it's like, what are you going to do? Got 3 kids in diapers, 2 that are really, really on her every 3 hours.
Right.
So she couldn't go. So I go to the concert. Jeff's with us. We're doing live cutaways with the radio station. And then we got asked to come to the area, the groupie area, where they have all the pinball machines and pool tables and all that, just to keep everybody busy. All the roadies are there and all that. And I see a pool table, and I love pool. So I rack them up. All of a sudden, I turn around and say, "Hey, want to play?" And it's Keith Richard. I go, "Yeah, sure." So I start playing pool with Keith Richard. It's like, this is cool. Again, keep in mind, no cell phones. And there was some media.
You couldn't even take a selfie with Keith.
Yeah,
Richards.
I couldn't do any of that. All of a sudden, Jane Scott, the late great Jane Scott from the Play Dealer, comes by, and there started to get a crowd, and we're just kind of goofing around. And then I get tapped on the back, and it's O's wedding, and it's Jagger.
Mick Jagger.
Jagger's there.
Taps you on the shoulder.
And he asks, I said, "I really don't know, Mick, but this is kind of cool."
And so you still to this day don't know if you beat him in
I have
pool,
no idea.
Just...
I have no idea, and it's just a story of which I can tell. But the crazy part about it is, I got home that night, and my wife said, "How was everything?" "Oh, it was good. It was a really good show." And that was it.
Couldn't tell her.
And then the next day, everybody's talking about the Stones concert.
Yeah.
"Hey, I heard Flash was playing pool with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards." And then she said, "You son of a bitch."
You're lucky she didn't divorce you right then and there.
I can't believe that. Oh.
She should have divorced you right
Yeah,
then and there.
It is a sore spot. And she's listening right now. She's probably really mad at me.
What's
We're
her
going
name?
on vacation for a couple of days.
What's her name? What's your wife's
Deb.
name? What? Deb?
Deb.
Deb. And still married. You got married
Still
in
married.
1988.
Yeah, we just celebrated.
How'd you meet her? Was she a fan of the show? And you?
She was. Yeah.
She
Well,
come out to Jeff and Flash's whatever the club was.
You know how we met? We met on an MMS cruise, and we were married, but not to each other. That's another story. That was in 1985, and that was the hurricane cruise called Hurricane Gloria.
Okay.
And we went to Bermuda.
Yeah.
We had about 35 listeners, and we did this. We went to Jamaica. Those were fun trips.
And a hurricane rolled through.
And a hurricane, yeah, we had heard that a hurricane was going to hit in that area, the Caribbean and Bermuda. Bermuda's farther out in the Atlantic. And we figured, well, you know how it goes. Hurricanes hit or miss.
Yeah.
So we sailed, and it was a crazy cruise and all that. But we met, and sparks started flying, and then shortly after that, the first marriage unraveled, and then we got married a couple years later.
Wow.
And we had 3
Now,
kids together.
Were you worried about that? Because you meet this woman on this cruise. You're married.
Mm-hmm.
She's married.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing something happened on this cruise. We all know that, right?
Were there kids a lot on the cruise or just adulteries?
What's it?
Just adulteries.
But
nothing happened on the cruise.
Oh, I don't believe
nothing
you. Flash,
happened.
you're lying. I don't believe him. I got to call out the guy. I mean, but were you worried that as you start your relationship with her, that if she's doing that with her husband, she's currently married, if she's interested in you, that the same thing could happen down the road where maybe she meets someone else and gets rid of Flash. She's like, I've had enough of you. Because as they say, once a cheater, always a cheater.
We're too old to do that now.
Now, but I'm just saying back then it didn't give you. You didn't.
No.
So still married, so that's good. You were telling me during the commercial break you have twins, and both of them have MS. And you're doing a fundraiser for this.
Yeah, it's going to be September 27th, right across the street from where you're located here off of Rockside at the Impulse Lounge in the Holiday Inn. And Lynette is the general sales manager over there. And she's an old fan. There's so many of them out there. And we appreciate those of you listening right now. If you're an old fan, God bless you.
Yes.
Thanks for being there for us during that time. And I have done several fundraising events throughout the time that we found out Stephanie is the baby in the family. She's 6 minutes younger than her sister Rachel. And this happened 10 years ago. She was diagnosed with MS in 2008. Her twin sister.
How old was she?
18.
Who's diagnosed with MS at 18? I mean, I thought you got this in your 40 or something. 40,
no, not really. No,
really?
It affects women over men 2 to 1.
Uh-huh.
Women in their 20s primarily or in their 50s. And she was one of the unlucky ones, and she was diagnosed. She was working at a restaurant as a hostess, and all of a sudden her leg went numb. And it's heartbreaking, too, because when she came home, she couldn't even crawl up the stairs. She had to go backwards. She had to get upstairs to her bedroom.
Wow.
So she was on a medication. She's been on various medications.
How long did it take for them to diagnose that as MS?
About a month.
A month, okay.
Yeah, it's almost like a process of elimination.
Yeah.
Where they check one thing, they check another thing, and they finally realize.
But that must not have been the first thing you thought when she comes home from work and she can't move her leg or whatever.
We had no idea.
Yeah.
It was scary, and it scared her. And she's fighting it. It's a disease. There's no cure. The drugs that they give you, which are ridiculously priced. Her sister is on a drug called Tisabri that costs $22,000 a month.
A month?
A month.
That's outrageous.
And because of what she makes, the drug company, they have certain pots of money for this. The drug company is letting that go, but the facility fee to inject it, she still has to deal with that.
Because the other twin, they've both been diagnosed with MS.
They've both been diagnosed, yeah.
How's that? Is it because
they're
are
twins.
identical twins?
They are identical, yeah.
That they both get whatever, this is a genetic disease.
Yeah.
And so does it always happen if one twin has it, the other twin is going to get it?
We were told when Stephanie was diagnosed, we were told that there was about a 50% chance that her twin sister would get it sometime in her life.
What a horrible thing to find out, because now she's, even before she's diagnosed, this has got to be hanging over her head.
Yeah.
Like, I could be diagnosed with this at any time.
Yeah. And it happened 3 years later. And they both handle it in different ways. It affects everybody differently. There's some people that will end up in a wheelchair within months.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people that live normal lives. And the drugs that are on the market today, and there's 25 years ago, there were no drugs, none. And a lot of the research is happening right here in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
There's doing fantastic research, especially at the Cleveland Clinic. And they've developed, there's at least 24 drugs out there now, and they're called disease-modifying drugs. All they do is confuse the disease. So it doesn't
cure it.
Yeah, it doesn't cure it, but it confuses it.
Mm-hmm.
So it slows it down, and that's all we can hope for right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing stem cell therapy. They're doing that at the clinic. They've been able to reverse it in some cases.
Wow.
Yeah, they've been doing that with some leukemia patients as well, where they reduce it. Like I said, the medical facilities that we have here today are unbelievable. and it's happening as we speak right now. So we want to keep that going, and that's what the MS Society does. We started Motivate My Sister in 2008. It was Motivate Steph, excuse me. I'm jumping ahead of myself. It was Motivate Steph, MS, Motivate Steph. And then when Rachel was diagnosed 3 years later, we said, well, we have to change the name of the team to Motivate My Sister. And we started a website. We have motivatemysister.com and also .org, and Motivate My Sister, MMS.
It all comes full circle.
It all comes together. And I said, for 21 years, I spent at MMS, and now for the rest of my life, it's all about MS. And we're doing everything possible that we can to raise money. And this is one of many events. You can go to our website, motivatemysister.org, and you could see our twins and see what we're doing. But we have raised over $200,000 for the local MS Society, and we're very involved. I MC a lot of their functions that they have where they honor people that have raised a lot of money. So it's good to be part of that, and it's my mission. That's my mission.
This is Thursday, September 27th, 6 to 9 p.m. at the Impulse Lounge Holiday Inn, right across the street from where WMMS is located now, over on Rockside Road, and it's $25 for tickets. You will be there. Before I let you go, so you told me some great memories about bands. Who is the biggest dick?
Movie star. I can't think of his name right now. Oh, Elliot Gould.
Elliot Gould was a dick. Why? What did he do?
Just, I don't know if he was hungover or on drugs or something, but he did. How many times you've had guests that are just, I don't know, they don't want to be here?
Right now.
You know what I'm talking about? Right now?
I'm just kidding.
You bastard. But there's some people that they're forced in here just because they're on a promotional tour. Right, and I don't know what happened with him. And at the time, there was a very popular TV show called The Morning Exchange on Channel 5. And he was, often we would compete with guests, and they would get a guest, send him over to us, or we would get a guest over there. And I don't know what happened, but he was in a movie, and we tried to talk to him, and hello? Yeah. Okay.
Just one word answers, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just
sucked.
It was ridiculous, to the point where I even called the people over on Channel 5 and said, hey, did you have the same problem? Oh, yeah. So and think about it. Elliot Gould, the guy's got a name, a reputation, promoting a movie that he's going to be in. I think you would try to take the high road no matter how you felt. I don't care if he was suffering from the flu. Say something.
Yes.
Tell me. Give me some content.
Yes.
Don't be an idiot.
Right.
And so it was just like one of those things that and everybody, the listeners called and said, what happened to him? Yeah. I mean, he did himself a disservice. And it just, I never could understand that.
Flash, he's getting ready to go on vacation. He's going to be gone all week. He's going to hang out with the wife. They're going to make sweet love. Still the spark after they met on that cruise. They're still
we love it. We love each other. We have a great relationship. We have a wonderful family. We have 3 children together.
Yeah.
We have all together. I have a stepson who lives in Brecksville. He's a writer, works out of his home. I have a stepdaughter who was a former teacher, who is a great mom, and we have collectively 7 grandchildren. Wow. We have a new grandchild from my Jackie, who made me a dad with Deb 30 years ago, and now she made me a grandpa. And we have a little one. He's 4.5 weeks old, and he's knocking on 10 pounds already, little Julian Edward.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
What is
I've
it,
got the Pete Townsend drop here.
Let me hear it. Hold on. This was recorded at the, where did you say, municipal, where was this recorded? The Pete Townsend.
You're thinking of the Stones. This was at Richfield Coliseum.
Richfield Coliseum.
Which is no longer.
All right.
This is Pete Townsend on WMMS, and I'd like to remind you that rock and roll will always, 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 always overcome eventually.
I love this poster that they're showing on RMG TV for The Who. Schlitz Beer is the sponsor. Boy, have things changed.
Yeah.
Wow, Schlitz.
You have to take this platform beer with the buzzard and put
That's
it over it.
right. Well, just Photoshop that. Well, Flash, thank you for coming in and telling us some stories of the long history of this radio station, WMMS. Someday, years from now, I will be on the air with
a kid that,
some young punk douche doing mornings on WMMS.
Yeah, a kid who hasn't even been born yet.
That's right. You're right, douchey. And I'll be sitting where he is right now, telling stories about what an idiot douchey is, and how stupid Deer was.
Thank you. How bad Jeffrey
Charlie
smelled.
never played any sound effects, and Jeffrey crapped his pants here at the radio station
Twice.
one day, and all of that.
And today, what's coming up as far as MMS? Flash he's coming up at noon.
Yes, noon at right here on the radio station at noon. They have.
It's right there, hon. Left.
I think we're doing the 90s today.
Is today the 90s?
Today is the 90s.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's my
Flannel, grunge,
understanding they're going to
alternative,
play
all.
them all on Labor Day.
Okay.
From
so every
8:30.
day this week, it's like you're sort of hosting a decade of rock from the radio station's history. So it's the 90s today at 12 noon. And for our other markets who are listening, well, I don't know what sorry, I guess I should tell you, because I hope that you were interested, even though the WMMS probably hasn't been a part of your life if you're listening to us in another market, but hopefully it was interesting enough. And if it wasn't, it's all Flash's fault. Flash, thank you for coming in. Have fun on your vacation.
Thank you.
I have to wrap everything up. We will be back live tomorrow morning. Have a great day. It's Rover's Morning Glory on the world-famous Buzzard, 100.7 WMMS. Bye.
Yes.